pass H.R. 4055, the American Cybersecurity Literacy Act, as amended.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar Number 113, H.R. 4055, a bill to establish a cybersecurity literacy campaign and for other purposes.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Pallone, and the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Latta, each will control 20 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from New Jersey.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on H.R. 4055.
Without objection.
And, Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
I rise in strong support of H.R. 4055, the American Cybersecurity Literacy Act. Cybersecurity threats targeting Americans are increasingly common, particularly since wireless devices proliferate our society. H.R. 4055, the American Cybersecurity Literacy Act, is intended to help Americans arm themselves with the information and tools they need to prevent being a victim of a cyber attack. The bipartisan legislation requires the Assistant Secretary for Communications and Information to create and conduct a cybersecurity campaign to increase the knowledge and awareness of best practices to avoid cyber attacks. The bill also requires the campaign to, among other things, provide instructions about how to identify common problematic attacks like phishing emails and unsecure websites. The campaign will also highlight the benefits of changing default passwords and encouraging the use of cybersecurity tools like multi-factor authentication and complex passwords. Finally, to ensure that as many Americans as possible can benefit from this information, the legislation requires the campaign to be in as many languages and formats as practicable. And this legislation will arm the American people with critical information that they need to ensure they're not the victim of a cyber attack. It's important to note that by passing this bill, we're not shifting the burden of preventing cybersecurity attacks away from large, sophisticated companies and onto individuals. Companies still have the primary responsibility of preventing these attacks, and there's still much work to do. But this legislation adds additional layers of protection by giving consumers the tools and information to protect themselves. I want to applaud Representatives Kinzinger, Eshoo, Veazey, Houlihan, and Bilirakis for their work on this important bipartisan bill that continues our work of protecting consumers, and I urge my colleagues to support it, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from New Jersey reserves. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise today in support of H.R. 4055, the American Cybersecurity Literacy Act, which was introduced by Representative Kinzinger and Eshoo. The Cybersecurity Solarium Commission identified cyber hygiene as a key challenge affecting our readiness as a country. As many cybersecurity professionals will attest, there are common steps that Americans can take to prevent disruption to networks and the theft of personal information. This legislation directs the National Telecommunication and Information Administration to establish a cybersecurity literacy campaign to educate Americans on cybersecurity risks and best practices to reduce those risks. By increasing awareness of the simple steps that can be taken every day, we can reduce cybersecurity incidents. I urge my colleagues to support this legislation, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Ohio reserves. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I have no additional members who wish to speak.
Gentleman from New Jersey reserves. The gentleman from Ohio.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a very important piece of legislation. I know I've had about 7 different cybersecurity events with the FBI in my district for my constituents. One of the things that they've always stressed is good hygiene, and over 80% is good hygiene that presents these cybersecurity attacks. So I urge support of this legislation. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Ohio yields back. The gentleman from New Jersey is recognized.
And, Mr. Speaker, I would urge support again for this bipartisan bill, and I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill H.R. 4055 as amended? Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, for what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, request the yeas and nays.
Pursuant to Section 3S of House Resolution 8, the yeas and nays are ordered.